Good evening. This is Pamela, and you're listening to Watchman on the Pod. I'm going to start reading a book. I don't know if I'll get it finished today or not. I can't really answer that question. I know that I said I was going to take a couple days off to rest, but I just feel so odd. You don't take a break from God ever. You know what I mean? And I just feel like I'm sitting idle if I'm not doing anything. So I decided that I'm going to just go ahead and read this book, and I've listened to the whole New Testament the last, what, 24 hours or so, I believe it is. I listened to the entire thing, and I'm one that I always want to keep busy. So I got this book in the mail today. I had ordered, and it's called A New World Order is Coming, Who Will Rule by Dr. Cathy Burns. And about the author says Dr. Burns has a degree in Bible philosophy and has spent the past 20 years doing extensive research on the New Age movement and related subjects. She has written many articles, tracts, and booklets on various topics, including 10 other books: Hidden Secrets of Masonry, Hidden Secrets of the Eastern Star, Mormonism, Masonry, and the Godhood, Pathway to Peace, Secure in Christ, Tongues, Prosperities, and Godhood, A Scriptural View of Hell, Masonic and Occult Symbols Illustrated, Alcoholic Anonymous Unmasked, and Billy Graham and His Friends. Her name is listed in Who's Who in Religion, Who's Who in the East, Who's Who in America, World Who's Who of Women, Dictionary of International Biography, International Who's Who of Professionals, and 500 Notable Women, 2,000 Notable American Women, etc. She has also done radio interviews in the United States and Canada. The publishing company that she uses is by Sharing. It is a Christian publishing company, and that is in Mount Carmel, Pennsylvania. Um, she like it said, had written the Billy Graham and His Friends, A Hidden Agenda, the one that I am still reading to you guys, and also the one that I had just finished reading, and I'm trying to find it's the Nephilim, Fallen Angels, and Aliens. That was very good, very informative. So I just wanted to begin reading this book because like I said, I feel kind of odd sitting idle and really not doing anything. I love you guys so very much, and I love the Lord Jesus so much more. And, you know, if you're not moving, you're falling. Okay, all right. I love you. Here we go. Chapter 1. A new world order is coming. Peace, peace. We must have peace at any cost is the cry being heard from every quarter today. If we don't soon agree to have a peaceful world, we will all die in nuclear holocaust, we are told. So what will it take to have a peaceful coexistence? The answer given is the establishment of a new world government. Lord Beveridge of England maintained, quote, "World peace requires world order. World order requires world law. World law requires world government," unquote. In a book written by attorney William Sheehan entitled Stop Global Drift, the author decried the drift of nations toward nuclear holocaust and presents the solution to a world federation. Albert Einstein states, quote, "Mankind's desire for peace can be realized only by the creation of a world government. With all my heart, I believe that the world's present system of sovereign nations can only lead to barbarism, war, and inhumanity, and that only law can assure progress toward a civilized, peaceful humanity," unquote. Now, this name I probably will slaughter. Ja A R L Jawaharlal Nehru comments, quote, "I have long believed the only way peace can be achieved is through world government. World government is the most obvious solution to the problem of war," claims David W. Ziegler. He continues, "World government is a frontal attack on the problem of state sovereignty. Advocates of world government identify state sovereignty as a major cause of war. They wish to deprive the individual states of both the ability and the excuse to use force in their own behalf to settle disputes. Under world government, force would be centralized under one authority. Euthant brags, world federalists hold before us the vision of a unified mankind living in a peace under a just world order. The heart of their program, a world under law, is realistic and attainable. Mortimer Adler says, world peace is impossible without world government. Winston Churchill said, the creation of an authoritative world order is the ultimate aim toward which we strive. Nations must unite in a world government or perish, commented Charles de Gaulle. Nehru maintained, we have arrived at a stage where the next step must comprise a world of all its states, each having economic independence, but submitting to the authority of world organization. Many people feel that a one world government is necessary for the good of mankind. They reason that if there is one common world, then there will not be any nuclear war, and that the destruction of the human race can be averted. In fact, Bertrand Russell believes that the only possibilities are now world government or death. Einstein asserted there is no salvation for civilization or even the human race other than the creation of a world government. Proponents claim that another advantage to world government is that terrorism should decline. The reason is twofold. First, world law could make international terrorism illegal, could establish penalties for violators, and would permit world police to apprehend terrorists in any country where they sought refuge. And second, there would be less likely of terrorism for political reasons. 1 minute. Okay. The establishment of a one world government would mean that all the nations of the world would be united under one banner, with one common currency, one common language, and one leader ruling over all. This world government would also have a world tax, world law, a world police form, a world army, etc. Robert Mueller, former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, said, we must move quickly as possible to a one world government, one world religion, under a one world leader. In one letter urging people to become world citizens, Mr. Gary Davis, coordinator of World Government of World Citizens, relates, as a registered world citizen, you have the opportunity to help evolve such just a democratic world laws to be enacted by an elected world parliament, administered by a world executive, controlled by a world court, and enforced by a world peace force. This group issues world passports, world citizen cards, world's identity cards, world's birth certificate, and world marriage certificates. Wouldn't it be wonderful to go anywhere in the world and be able to use the same currency and use it in your own country? Wouldn't it be great to travel through different countries and be able to converse with anyone you wanted to without having a language barrier? A common language and currency sound wonderful, don't they? Perhaps this utopian dream sounds wonderful, but can it be as fantastic as it sounds? Let's review a few facts before you make your final decision. First of all, hold on 1 minute. Who are the main promoters of a one world government? Actually, a world government is one of the main goals, if not the main goal, of New Agers, atheistic communists, and humanists. The Humanist Manifesto, too, urges us to, quote, to move toward the building of a world community, unquote. Lawrence Abbott, a proponent of a world government, tells us that there are a number of organizations in the United States alone that, quote, have world federalism or world law as their objective. Among them are World Federalist Association, World Federalist Political Education Committee, American Movement for World Government, Campaign for World Government, World Federal Authority Committee, Federal Union Ink Company, the World Constitution and Parliament Association, Common Heritage Institute, World Peace through World Law Center, World Without War Council, and World Citizens Assembly. Abbott also informs us within the United States Congress, an outstanding organization has grown up in support of the idea of substituting the rule of law for the rule of force and violence. Members of Congress for Peace Through Law. This is a bipartisan, bicameral organization whose membership has increased greatly since its inception in 1966. It now has 110 members, more than one-fifth the total membership of Congress. 49 of its members sponsored a resolution introduced in 1974 in both houses of Congress calling for, quote, world institutions strong enough to stop any nation from making war, capable of assuring disputes, and reliable enough to be entrusted with such powers, unquote. In other words, world government. As can be seen, there are many organizations which are pushing for the establishment of a one world government, including one group within our Congress. But that one specific organization would have the power to implement such a government? Would you believe that the answer is the United Nations? The Center of War Peace Studies states, quote, the obvious world organization that should be handling all these problems is the United Nations, unquote. Two lawyers, Greenville Clark and Louis Sohn, wrote a book entitled World Peace Through World Law. This book presented a blueprint for transforming the United Nations into a federal republic. Lola Davis, a New Ager, believes, quote, that the United Nations is an excellent first step for becoming the New Age world government, unquote. Many other individuals and groups also suggest that the UN should be given the right to control a world government. Since the UN seems to be the probable group to establish a world government, let's look at some of the UN's background. Brief history of the UN. At the end of World War I, President Woodrow Wilson, Thomas Lamont, Colonial House, Paul Warburg, and others went to Paris with high hopes of establishing a base for their much sought-after New World Order through the formation of a League of Nations. Congress, at the strong urging of the American people, rejected the treaty prepared at Paris. Since their hopes had failed, these internationalists pursued other avenues. One such area that was targeted was American education. The goal was to brainwash the youth into accepting a one-world government. To do so, the teachers themselves had to be indoctrinated, and textbook materials had to be changed to reflect this one-world attitude. Joy Elmer Morgan, former editor of the NEA Journal, stated, quote, in the struggle to establish an adequate world government, the teacher can do much to prepare the hearts and minds of children for global understanding and cooperation. At the very top of all the agencies which will assure the coming of world government must stand the school teacher and the organized profession, unquote. Another avenue was the organizing of the Council on Foreign Relations, CFR. The CFR publishes a magazine called Foreign Affairs as well as printing position papers. One of these papers was published on November 25, 1959, and was entitled Study Number 7. This document, I have to itch my eye. This document called for the building of a new international order which may be responsible to world aspirations for peace and for social and economic change, an international order, including labeling themselves as socialist communist, unquote. We now know that many of the founders of the CFR, for instance, Walter Lippmann, Alan Dulles, and Christian Herter, also wrote the League of Nations Charter. After the Pearl Harbor incident, a conference was called of all the nations allied against the Axis powers. Meeting in Washington, D.C. early in 1942, the representatives of 26 nations declared a declaration of the United Nations. Thus, the term Allied Powers was suddenly superseded by United Nations. Even before a founding meeting of the new United Nations organization could be held, the insiders began to sell out America's interests. The infamous Yalta Conference early in 1945, President Roosevelt and his advisors granted Russia 3 votes in the General Assembly to our 1. The veto provision was also written into the charter at Yalta. On April 25, 1945, less than 2 weeks after Roosevelt's death, the San Francisco Conference opened with representatives of 46 nations in attendance. They adopted the charter the following day, and the United Nations was on its way. Communistic connection. Just who helped support this UN Charter? Of course, it was the CFR members. For example, on February 17, 1950, CFR member James P. Warburg, co-founder of the United World Federalists and son of Federal Reserve banker Paul Warburg, tells the U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Subcommittee that studies led me 10 years ago to the conclusion that the great question of our time is not whether or not one world can be achieved, but whether or not one world can be achieved by peaceful means. We shall have world government whether we like it or not. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or conquest, unquote. In fact, 47 members of the CFR were members to the United States delegation. Now, all that had to be done was to have the charter ratified by the Senate. In order to get this charter ratified, much misinformation was spread to the American people. In addition, it was kept from the public that the UN was designed to promote the cause of the world's socialism, the aim of the USSR. You may wonder if it's fair to suggest that the UN is promoting the same goal as the communists. Okay, hold on. Yes. Well, here's a list of some of the men in the United States government whose planning led to the creation of the UN. Alger Hiss, who was the Secretary General of the UN's founding conference. Harry Dexter White. Virginus Coe. Noel Field, Lawrence Duggan, Henry Wadley, John Carter Vincent, David Weintraub, Nathan Silvermaster, Harold Glasser, Victor Perlot, Irving Kaplan, Solomon Adler, Abraham Silverman, William Ullman, William Taylor, and John Foster Dulles. What is quite interesting is that all of these men, with the exception of John Foster Dulles, were later identified in a sworn testimony as communist agents. Dulles, it should be noted, had been hired by Joseph Stalin to act as Russia's legal counsel in the United States. He was also closely associated with J.P. Morgan. A few others involved in this endeavor were Edward Steadiness and the new Secretary of State, Adlai Stevenson and Nelson Rockefeller. We are told the evidence given shows the communist influence which was involved during the establishment of the organization, and all indications are that it has maintained a socialist slant to its affairs. Earl Broder, a former leader in the U.S. Communist Party, said in his book Victory and After, the American communists worked energetically and tirelessly to lay the foundation for the United Nations, which we were sure would come into existence. Alger Hiss, who was later convicted as a communist traitor, became the acting Secretary General after the establishment of the UN. The April 16, 1945 issue of Time magazine called him one of the State Department's brighter young men. It was Hiss and Joseph E. Johnson, who later became Secretary of the Bilderbergers, who wrote much of the UN Charter, patterning it after the Constitution of Russia and the Communistic Manifesto. Not only were many of the drafters of the UN Charter communist, but the Constitution of the USSR is almost identical to the Constitution of the UN. In addition, the seals of both the UN and the USSR are very similar. Again, says Griffin, no coincidence. The UN seal was designed by Carlo Aldo Marzini, a well-known leftist. Torgev Lai, the first official UN Secretary General, was a high-ranking member of Norway's Social Democratic Labour Party, which was an offshoot of the Third Communist International. Dag Hammarskjöld, the second Secretary General, was a Swedish socialist who openly pushed communist policies, and U Thant, the third secretary, was a Marxist. In 1978, Arkady Shishkovshniko, I can't pronounce that name, an ex-KGB agent and Undersecretary for Political and Security Council Affairs, who defected, said that many Soviet UN delegates worked for the KGB. Even though the United Nations is communistic, there is a slight vestige of religion that can be found there. The only religious symbol in the UN headquarters is an obscenely posed statue of Zeus, pagan Greek god, with a record of lust, incest, bestiality, and procreation on the most degenerate level, very appropriate to our modern permissive society. Are you starting to get an idea of what life in a one-world government with a one-world religion under the control of a United Nations may entail? It doesn't sound quite so wonderful now, does it? The UN poses as a peacekeeping organization. The preamble to its charter states that the United Nations is determined to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war, which twice in our lifetime has brought untold sorrow to mankind. How has the UN measured up? Well, a quick look at the United Nations record of the past 4½ decades reveals that the UN is far from a peacekeeping organization. One author comments, quote, "The simple truth is that never in all of recorded history has there been a similar period so filled with war, terrorism, and moral corruption. Since 1945, there have been more than 50 major outbreaks of violence: Korea, Vietnam, Hungary, Tibet, Biafra, and Kanaga, I don't know that name, are just a few. During the same period of time, well over 1 billion people have been enslaved by the communists. The hypocritical UN has not prevented the enslavement of a single person, and it hasn't liberated a single individual from communist tyranny. It hasn't tried to, for liberty is not the goal of the United Nations. On second thought, maybe the UN is a peacekeeping organization. It keeps peace from the people. The goal is control. If the goal of the UN is not liberty, then what is it? The answer can be summed up in one word: control. Buckminster Fuller, one of the top men in the New Age movement before his death, said that, quote, "In order to control the world's supply routes must be controlled," unquote. Robert Mueller, former Assistant Secretary General of the United Nations, who is now Chancellor for the United Nations Peace University, shares the UN's future plans. At the world level, the UN has adopted a World Economic Development Strategy. The Food and Agriculture Organization has a World Food Plan 2000. The World Health Organization, a World Health Plan 2000. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, I think we call that UNESCO. It's UNESCO. A World Literacy Plan 2000, the ILO, International Labour Organization, a World Employment Plan 2000, and the UN Industrial Development Organization, a World Industry Plan 2000. UN demographers provided us with the population projections for the next 100 years, and the World Meteorological Organization tries to forecast our climate for the next several hundred years. He continues, a world core curriculum might seem utopian today. By the end of the year 2000, it will be a down-to-earth daily reality in all the schools of the world. It appears as though almost every aspect of a person's life will be controlled by the UN. Notice that these plans for 2000 include food, health, employment, industry, and education. But food seems to be the greatest area where control is needed. In fact, Buckminster Fuller has said, in essence, don't give me any other job. Just let me be the head of the food authority and I'll have the whole world at my feet tomorrow. If you were starving to death and new food was available, you would do almost anything to get it, and the New Agers, communists, etc. know this. Therefore, if they have control of the food supply, they really have control of the people. Benjamin Cream, the spokesman for the, how do you say that? Oh, Matria, I think is how you say it, who is supposedly the New Age Christ, tells us, quote, the food exists. It is simply not distributed. The hierarchy, the demonic leadership of the New Age, has plans already made, ready to put into effect when the will is there, which will equally distribute the food. There is a group of high initiates, industrialists, economists, administrators of great experience and achievement, who, with hierarchy, have worked out plans and blueprints which will solve the redistribution problems of the world. When the political will is there to implement them, these plans are ready to transform the world. This can be done in no time at all, unquote. In other words, all the plans have been laid for the UN to control the food, and when the time is ripe, these plans will be implemented speedily. Results of live aid. The control of food has already happened on a smaller scale in Ethiopia. Remember Live Aid, when numerous rock stars made a united effort to raise funds for the hungry? Did you ever wonder what happened to the $100 million that was raised? Well, food was given to the communistic government of Ethiopia. Now, it was easy to get food. All the people had to do was to go to the government when they became hungry. In return for the food, all the government asked of them was to sign a pledge of allegiance to the communist government. Those who refused to do so were simply killed on the spot. Their choice was simple: conform or die. Of course, they had a choice of how to die. They could avoid going to the government and starve to death, or have the government shoot them. Something of this nature could easily be implemented by a world government. In fact, a scenario of this nature is very easy to imagine if you've ever studied Revelation 13. It is interesting to note that the New Agers already have plans for mass initiations. David Spangler, a very prominent New Ager, claims Lucifer works within each of us to bring us to wholeness. And as we move into a new age, which is the age of man's wholeness, each of us, in some way, is brought to that point which I term the Luciferic Initiation, the particular doorway through which the individual must pass if he is to come fully into the presence of his light and his wholeness. Unquote. Later in this book, Reflections on the Christ, he states, quote, Lucifer came to give us the final gift of wholeness. If we accept it, then he is free, and we are free. That is the Luciferic Initiation. It is one that many people now in the days ahead will be facing, for it is an initiation into the New Age, unquote. Luciferic Initiation. In the 13th chapter of Revelation, we see that a leader will one day gain control of the entire world. He will then cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation chapter 13, verses 16 through 17. Verse 15 also informs us that many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Could David Spangler's Luciferic Initiation into the New Age be the same one that Revelation 13 mentions? It is quite possible. Spangler, as well as many others, remind us that if we do not conform to their values and ideas, that we will be removed or sent into the dimension of the spirit. But put simply, they advocate death for all who disagree with their version of a one-world government. In the next chapter, we will take a closer look at the New World religion and misfits, the Christians, being killed. John 16, verse 2 plainly forewarns us that the time cometh that whosoever killeth you will think that he doeth God service. Chapter 2. Does the world really think that Christians are misfits and that they are impeding progress? Yes, they do. To the world, the Christian is the monkey wrench in the machinery. Actually, the Christian's righteous life is an indictment of the world's sin and wrongdoing. If the Christian could only be removed, the world would be left to do its own thing without suffering from a guilty conscience. Like Cain, the world wants to get rid of the Abels. How do we know that the world actually hates us? First of all, the Bible tells us so. However, the world itself also lets us know. There are numerous quotations from New Agers, occultists, and humanists that reiterate time and time again that the Christians stand in their way. Since Christians are aware that the New World Order and the One World religion will be controlled by the Antichrist and his cohorts, we cannot support it. Therefore, the New Agers, to accomplish their diabolical plan, the Christians must be silenced. Let's look at what some of the goals of this One World religion would entail. World Goodwill, a New Age organization, explains. The churches and the world religions should indicate the unity within all facets of truth, which will provide a universal platform, one to which all men everywhere could give allegiance. Such a platform should include the truth that all men are divine, the truth that evolution governs the growth of the human being. In other words, this one world religion should include the belief that each individual is a god, all men are divine, and the belief in evolution. Naturally, a Bible-believing Christian cannot accept either idea. The Word of God clearly informs us that there is only one God, not billions of individual gods. From reading the scriptures, we also know that humankind was created. We did not evolve. Because we cannot accept these beliefs, Christians are misfits. We do not fit in with the New Age plan. World Goodwill also claims religion in the New Age must be based on truths which are universally accepted. These are, number one, the fact of God both transcendent and immanent, the fact of immortality and of eternal persistence, reincarnation, arising from man's essential divinity, the continuity of revelation. Another truth that we are to accept is the theory of reincarnation. The Bible clearly teaches us that there is no such thing as reincarnation, for it is appointed unto men once to die. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 27. We are also told that there are new revelations being given today, but we know that the Bible was complete, and we are warned. Add thou not unto his words, lest he reprove thee, and thou be found a liar. Proverbs chapter 30, verse 6, Revelation 22, 18 through 19, and Deuteronomy 4, 2. So there is no ongoing revelation. These new revelations were supposed to have come through Buddha, Krishna, Imam Mahdi, and other false teachers. Of course, to achieve a world civilization, we must create our societies with their values. The New Agers tell us. They claim our values and beliefs must be changed if we are to fit into this new world order. New values necessary. One flyer maintains this is a time of preparation, not only for a few civilization and culture in a new world order, but also not a few new. for a new civilization and culture and a new world order, but also for the coming of a new spiritual dispensation. Preparation by men and women of goodwill is needed to introduce new values for living, new standards of behavior, new attitudes of non-separatedness and cooperation, leading to right human relations and a world at peace. The coming world teacher will be mainly concerned not with the result of past error and inadequacy, but with the requirements of a new world order and with the reorganization of the social structure. Jim Garrison, president of the New Age Gorbachev Foundation, has said, quote, "We are going to end up with world government. It's inevitable. There's going to be conflict, coercion, and consensus. That's all part of what will be required as we give birth to the first global civilization," end quote. Christians are well aware that the coming world teacher is the Antichrist. So we do not share the New Agers' enthusiasm, nor can we support their new world religion. So how do the New Agers and humanists view Christians? They contend the church today is in many ways the tomb of truth. The presentation of divine truth has not kept pace with the growth of the human intellect. Alice Bailey also reminds us. The same old formulas, the same old theologies, and the same old interpretations are deemed adequate, to meet man's modern needs and inquiries. They are not. The church today is the tomb of the Christ, and the stone of theology has been rolled to the door of the sepulchre. In other words, according to Bailey, Christians' belief and the Bible are outdated. We need a modern revelation for today. Belief in the Word of God is deemed old-fashioned, and it is dead, the tomb of truth, as far as the New Agers are concerned. David Spangler declares, "We can take all the scriptures and all the teachings and all the tablets and all the laws and all the marshmallows and have a jolly good bonfire and marshmallow roast because that is all they are worth." Not only is the Bible considered to be out of date, but those who believe it are looked on as being stupid and ignorant. Worse yet, we are told that fundamentalism is hazarded one's mental well-being. New Ager Dick Suffin feels that fundamentalism is extremely dangerous to the future of this planet and the potential for a new age. One newsletter informs us, quote, "We also need to continue telling the public how the fundamentalist experience can be a serious mental health hazard to millions," unquote. In fact, one of the Fundamentalist Anonymous goals is to help people make a successful transition from fundamentalism to a healthier lifestyle. Albert Ellis, a humanist and director of the Institute for Rational Emotive Therapy, made the proposition that unbelief, humanism, skepticism, and even thoroughgoing atheism not only admit but are practically synonymous with mental health, and that devout belief, dogmatism, and religiosity distinctly contribute to, and in some ways are equal to, mental or emotional disturbance. Echoing the same theme is J.L. Moreno, who proclaimed, "My job is to destroy the God syndrome and the concepts of right and wrong, which is the cause of all psychological illness." Dan Barker, a former evangelist who is now an atheist, remarks, "As a free thinker, I now see the dangers of fundamentalism," unquote. Thomas Ehrenzeller, a director of the World Federalist, asserts, "Those who fall back to old-time religions are trying to hide in the past when things were simpler and less thought was required. Such timidity is unacceptable. We have to face the world as it is, doing what is necessary to save it." A growing number of people are sponsoring a backlash against the wave of religious fundamental fanaticism. The right course to take is that which will lead to a new world of unity and world law. One homosexual refers to a fundamentalist as a mental. is a fundamental. Another New Ager changes the word Christendom into Christendom. You can see what the New Agers think of Christians and those who profess a belief in God. In fact, as mentioned earlier, the New Agers want to get rid of those who hold firmly to a belief system. One magazine article explains, the Piscean age was one of belief, like each preceding age. It provided what was needed to assist man's development and evolution. Likewise, after having fulfilled its purpose, a new age would come into being as the Aquarian age is doing now. This is the age of enlightenment. Enlightenment means being in the light. It's the next step beyond belief. Enlightenment doesn't have anything to do with belief, which involves judging. Obviously, these two ages are in accord or compatible with each other. What's important is that it physically signifies the eventual death of all belief systems. In other words, the age of belief is terminally ill, beyond all hope. Of course, not only are belief systems like Christianity beyond all hope, but this article continues. Likewise, those who are attached or committed to a belief system will also follow along with that system when it's eventually shattered. In the end, not a belief will survive. Another article in this issue of Seeds of Peace reminds us maybe it's time you start questioning what you see and hear rather than sinking into one belief system after another. If you don't, you could end up finding yourself being scratched from the game. Being scratched from the game is a polite way of saying that those who hold to a belief system will be killed. Yes, plans have been laid to kill the Christians so that the New World Order can be inaugurated. Before you dismiss the above quotation as being what was said in passing or in jest or by someone on the fringe of the New Age movement, let me assure you that this is not the case. One New Ager, occultist, and humanist after another have echoed the same sentiments. Some cautiously word their comments so that the statement doesn't register with the average reader. Others bluntly and clearly announce their intentions. An example of a veiled statement comes from Matthew Fox. He speaks of the New Age with its 4 billion occupants. I'd like to know what happened to the other almost 2 billion people since the world's population is already nearing the 6 billion mark. Without actually saying it, Fox has just done away with about 1/3 of the Earth's inhabitants. Several writers use their terminology for Christians and those who hold to a belief system, such as referring to us as lower forms, unfit, cancer, defective seeds, streptococcus germs, and infection. For example, a book entitled The Path of Light declares, those who still cling to the old ways and refuse to accept the new vibrations, such individuals will not be able to withstand the higher vibrations flowing over the entire Earth planet itself. The lower forms, those who cling to the old way, upon Earth will be removed. They will go through the change from the physical solid body to the spirit body. Put bluntly, those who refuse to accept the New Age ideas will be killed. Radhakrishna confesses that man must change or perish. Likewise, a message from the Maitreya, the New Age Christ, proclaims, man must change or die. There is no other course. Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, the man who brought the occultic practice of transitional meditation, TM, to the West, has said in reference to those who won't practice TM, there was not and will not be a place for the unfit. The fit will lead, and if the unfit are not coming along, there is no place for them. In the Age of Enlightenment, there is no place for ignorant people, unquote. Arthur Schlesinger, Jr., who was an advisor to the Kennedy administration, explicitly stated, we are not going to achieve a new world order without paying for it in blood, as well as in words and money. Democratic vice presidential nominee for 1984 and executive director of the World Future Society, Barbara Marx Hubbard, doesn't mince words either when she informs us humanity will not be able to make the transition from earth only to universal life until the chaff has been separated from the wheat. No worldly peace can prevail until the self-centered members of the planetary body either change or die. That is the choice. They must surely die or change. This act is as horrible as killing a cancer cell. It must be done for the sake of the future of the whole. There have always been defective seeds. In the past, they were permitted to die a natural death. We, the elders, have been patiently waiting until the very last moment before the quantum transformation to take action to cut out this corrupted and corrupting element in the body of humanity. It is like watching a cancer grow. Something must be done before the whole body is destroyed. Needed a surgical operation. Speaking through Alice Bailey, Jawel Cool, a demonic spirit guide, comments, a violent streptococcus germ and infection has menaced the life of humanity. The germ makes its presence felt in infected areas in the body of humanity. Another surgical operation must be necessary to dissipate the infection and get rid of the fever. Let us never forget that when a life form provides inadequate or too diseased or too crippled for the expression of that purpose, it is no disaster when that form has to go. Death is not a disaster to be feared. The work of the destroyer is not really cruel or undesirable. Therefore, there is much destruction permitted by the custodians of the plan, and much evil turned into good. It should come as no surprise that the New Agers and Humanists are anxious to get rid of the Christians. After all, we are viewed as cancer, germs, infections, etc. And who wants those items to flourish? No wonder they are calling for a surgical operation to have us removed. But you may be asking, how do you know for sure that they are really referring to the Christians? The answer is simple. Their own testimonies reveal it. Mortimer J. Adler explains, quote, world peace is impossible without world government. World government is impossible to establish, and even if established, it would not long endure and prosper without world community. And the world community requires a certain degree of cultural unity, a condition that certainly does not exist at present, unquote. The Omega letter expounds on this. Simply stated, Adler argues that we will not be able to attain world peace until we attain cultural unity. But Adler argues that there is only one obstacle to this unity: Christianity. Adler's point is simple. Christianity claims supernatural knowledge and divine revelation that is divisive and not open to rational debate, and therefore should not be tolerated. Dr. Christopher Hyatt refers to Christian fundamentalists as the shadow emerging in society. He predicted, however, that the fundamentalist forces will be overcome and there will be a changing of the guards. Hyatt went on to reveal just how this changing of the guards will take place. He stresses that the earth still requires some blood before it is ready to move into new and different areas. I see it, the New Age, as requiring a lot of blood, disruption, chaos, and pain for a mass change to occur. An absurd idea. John Randolph Price plainly identifies Christians in this statement, quote, there are some groups who continue to cling to the absurd idea that man is a miserable sinner and the worm of the dust. Unquote. He also notifies us that 2.5 billion people were killed. New Ager and humanist John Dunphy refers to Christianity as a rotting corpse. Yes, it is obvious that the New Agers intend to get rid of the Christians. World goodwill contends to build a new civilization based on the emerging new consciousness in humanity. The church organizations, if they want to survive, will have to adjust to the spiritual hierarchy, demonic leaders of the planet. The article continues, the Christian churches, writes Rothschilds in Reality and Illusion, must also kill all. I'm sorry, let me redo that. That kind of threw me off. She mentioned the Rothschilds again, threw me off. I'm sorry. The article continues, the Christian churches, writes Rothschild in Reality and Illusion, must also kill out all separativeness and learn to cooperate with all the other faiths, whose scriptures are of equal value and the beauty as the New Testament. Further identifying the Christians, occultist Alice Bailey admits that the enlightened people will not tolerate authoritarianism in any church or totalitarianism in any political system. They will not accept or permit the rule of any body of men who undertake to tell them what they must believe in order to be saved. In other words, any church or doctrine that teaches that Jesus is the only way through which humankind can be saved will not be tolerated. Surgery must be performed, and the infection of Christianity must be removed. Now that you've read a few facts about the coming one world government and the one world religion, I'm sure that you can see that the picture that the New Agers paint is not as beautiful as it is made to seem. In the next chapter, we will deal in particular with another phase leading up to a world government, and that is the destruction of patriotism and nationalism. Although these things are leading up to a terrible climax in world history, the Bible tells us, knowing the time, that now it is high time to wake out of sleep, for now is our salvation nearer than when we believed. Romans chapter 13. Verse 11. I'm going to end that there, and I'm going to pick that up here in a few minutes. So I'm just going to stop this recording and then record again in a minute. I got to take care of my eyes and my face. It's still very much swollen and itches horribly. All right, brothers and sisters, I love you so very much. Keep your eyes on Jesus always, and your nose in the book, which is the Word of God, and embed the Word of God upon the tablets of your hearts, so you will not sin against God or be deceived. I love you all. Bye-bye.